Hey guys, welcome back to the Falco. This video a little bit out of sync with the kind of post-match review videos that I'm normally doing. Comes off the back of a couple of performances where I've been critical of what we've done, the performances, the way that we've conducted ourselves. And what I really wanted to do is make sure that I addressed it's quite easy to look at a performance and look at it post and watch it back and analyze what went wrong. But actually the strength in, what you're trying to do as a coach is to look at what you can do to rectify that. And then the final step of that is obviously putting it in place. Now, the coaching staff at Tottenham are working hard behind the scenes, no matter what we think about it as fans, to do exactly that from their perspective and their point of view. So I wanted to have a look at a couple of themes that I think are really, really important to us taking the next step forward. And particularly in light of a couple of the performances that we've had, where I feel one of the things that's really lacking is the bravery in possession of the football. I think our press this season has been much improved. Some new personnel, including Dom Solanke, has very much helped us with that. And some younger players in backup and in reserve as well are having an effect. But I think that in possession, there have been instances throughout the season that have cost us where we've not done maybe what we needed to do to carry out Ange's system. Now, there's a lot of debate about what is Ange's system, what is Ange ball, what does it represent, what does it look like, how does it work, etc. There's a strong plan A, but is there a plan B? All of that kind of stuff. I think it's very simplistic to look at it in that terms that he's only got one way of playing and there's no other way of doing it. But what I'd like to look at is one particular area that I think if we start to improve it, we're going to see massive improvements in results because the performances will be there. And that is our bravery and our character in possession of the football. And that doesn't matter where you are on the pitch. I think Tottenham have shown we can be a very good, almost a pseudo transitional team. When we're really moving at pace and we're rolling and we're really getting that ball going forward quickly, we've shown that we can be a threat to any team because it's destabilizing. It puts oppositions on the back foot and it makes it really, really hard to defend. And we've got good quality players who, when they do good quality things, will lead to goals or will lead to strong outcomes. So the area that I think we're not doing as well is being brave on the ball, making sure that we put ourselves in positions where you as a player and you as an individual might be in an uncomfortable position. But if you're in the Ange system, you've got to be brave enough to step in there and then have the quality and back your quality to do the right thing in that situation. And I think too many times this season we've seen games where the atmosphere of the game and the way the game is going is not really in our favour. And we've got players that are hiding. We've got players that are that in between hiding and not quite making themselves available. So you could argue that players are moving about, but it's not done with the kind of decisiveness that's really saying to the player in possession of the ball at the time, give me this football. I want that ball because I'm going to make a difference and then I'm going to do the thing I need to do. And then the next person in the chain needs to do exactly the same thing. And then we start to build that kind of thing where you can circulate the ball at pace, even against low blocks or even against teams who are trying to cut you off with a high press when you're playing out of the back. So that bravery is what I want to look at. Let's look at it from playing out from the back, so playing through a press potentially. If you're in that situation, no matter what the personnel on the pitch are, you are looking for continuous rotations and continuous players moving into new positions, wanting the football. Okay, how many times are we seeing it that's one of our centre-halves or our goalkeeper, but particularly Romero, is standing with the foot on the ball or having the ball at feet, and we are moving it side to side or standing completely stock still and we're waiting for something to happen? That's not going to be successful. Like, if you reduce that all the way down to the absurd, it will be Romero standing with his foot on the ball, the opposition either sitting in or being willing to press up, and nothing happening. We'll just knock it across the back if they're pressing, or if they sit in mid or low block, he will just stand with his foot on the ball. That's never going to be successful. So what are we looking at? At the minute, our midfield, if we're playing a very attacking 3 with 2 8/10s in, for example, Maddison and Decky, and then 1 6 style player like Biss or Bentancur, you need that constant movement between the lines where you're making the opposition question, do I come after you or not? So if the opposition is playing a high press, they are going to come. So that's the way they've set up. And the way you get around that is, first of all, by the pace of your passing. You've really got to be zippy with your passing and really confident with it. You've got to back everybody's touch, but you've also got to be putting those passes into places that is the least dangerous for the receiver of the ball, but also the most dangerous from them being able to get out and do something with it. So if you imagine the ball is now coming from Vicario, who's playing a straight ball into the middle, into the deepest lying midfielder, whoever that might be. If that's into Biss, we've seen it so many times when it works, of him, that ball being played to him slightly on his right-hand side so that he can then knock it either into one of the fullbacks in a triangle position to his right or to his left. Okay, so we're looking for one of the 2 fullbacks depending on which side of the pitch it's played out on. That is fine, but if the opposition is now pressing right up against the fullbacks, it's sending at least 1 player up against our centre halves and it's sending a midfielder up against Biss. What are you doing? Are you brave enough to then send another midfielder in, and then you've got 2 deep lying players? So if one presses Biss, is Maddison or Decky coming in? Now, Decky is not the player that normally does this, but is Maddison coming in? And is he looking to receive that ball? Is that bringing another player with you? If that's bringing another player with you, all of a sudden, the congestion in that area with potentially tucked in inverted fullbacks, 2 centre-halves, the play is really deep, and they've sent 4 or 5 players up into a press. What are we doing with that? And the idea that we can only play, passes along the ground because that's the Postecoglou way is nonsense. You absolutely have to be in a position where you're moving players about, not static, but then you are willing to clip it over that press. And that's the bit I don't think we do very well. I don't think we identify it early enough, and I don't think we're willing to play that ball early enough. Now, there are risks to this. If you're going to play over the high press, because it's a lofted ball, you again give a bit of advantage over to the opposition. So it's got to be so precise. Now, we are not talking about banging the ball away. There is, plenty of debate out there about there's a place for banging the ball away. And to a certain extent, I agree. But what we're talking about here is controlling the opposition with your passing and with your movements. So this high press, everybody's moved up. It's really, really congested in here. What we are doing a lot at the minute is we're taking the sting out of it by just playing it backwards. So we're not being very brave with it. We're not circulating very well in the midfield area. We're not moving our fullbacks in and out enough. And therefore, we just end up kind of moving it backwards. We've tried, we've probed maybe once. It doesn't look like it's on. And we quickly try to escape and we move it backwards. And it all starts again. But that just invites the opposition on. Okay, because they've seen success. You've not been able to get out. They've been successful in keeping you in, and therefore that brings them into a situation where their confidence goes up. If we're going to be moving the ball over and clipping it over the press, we need multiple players willing to do it. Can't just be Vicario. Vicario has got the quality to do it, but he's also shown that within his character, the game can get on top of him, and his distribution sinks as soon as the game is not going in his favour, similar to the way he is under the high ball. He's a confidence player, he's an emotional player, and so we need to get into a position where players are much braver in doing that, Vicario being one of them. Mickey van der Ven is not our chosen option of playing out from the defence. Romero is. He is technically a very gifted player, and he's certainly capable of it, but he is normally one of the players receiving, therefore he might well have someone pressing him high up, because teams have identified that he's got a great ball through the lines, so they will be looking to cut out his passing lanes and also to press him to force the ball onto someone else. If we get into that stage where we're able to move the ball with a bit of conviction, and it doesn't always need to be at 100 mile an hour where you're not quite in control of it, but you can just move it so you're moving the opposition around. And then once you've identified that the press is high enough and there are enough people committed to the press, and put it in a really good position over that first line, so you're still only dropping it into midfield, you're not spanking it clear, that will give teams something else to think about. Because as soon as you've clipped it over that line and held good possession, and you've not, given opposition fullbacks an easy ball to charge onto and to knock our wingers off it and to start a counter attack, if you do that with quality, all of a sudden you start to get that high press to back off. Okay, they will lose confidence in the high press if they see us getting out easily. Okay, so that's one. You can play over it, and again, it's not long ball football, it's just clipping it over with quality. The other way to do it is to get your rotations right and keep the ball on the floor. So again, if you're dropping midfielders in, if that midfielder gets pressed, it's very, very unlikely that a team is going to be confident enough to press all the way through 2 centre halves, 2 inverted fullbacks, and 2 midfielders. Okay, that's a 6-man press if you're going to go for it man to man. They will try and cover, so they will try and use one player to cover 2. They will block passing lanes, but you have to back yourself to be getting into positions and having the quality to play through narrow channels. So you're keeping the ball on the floor. Again, for me, moving the ball about with purpose and moving it quickly as opposed to slowing it down and waiting for something to happen is how you start to get those gaps. Those gaps start to appear. Now, we all get very nervous in the kind of fullback areas where we start to play little triangles and stuff. When it comes off, we're talking about prime Barcelona and we love it and we think it's excellent. But you can generate and manufacture that by moving the opposition about. At the minute, we're not doing that. Oppositions recognise when we're just moving the ball for moving its sake, and they're not committing to it. They won't change their positions significantly. They will continue to hedge, and these high quality, well coached, well instructed teams will find a way to make it super, super difficult. So you've got to start moving the ball with a bit of purpose. And as you see these tight little corridors, you've got to be proactive. You've got to see it and don't back off. This is Ange ball, okay? That confidence. You've seen the gap, you've seen the player can receive it, and you make that pass. Don't bottle it. Don't step off. Don't think, oh, it's a bit risky, I'm not going to do it. The real proof in the pudding is we're moving it about, you've spotted that gap, we're keeping the ball on the floor and put it in there and then back that player to do their job. If we haven't got the playing staff, if we have not got the players that can receive and can be comfortable at doing that, and if we've not got the players of the mentality who are brave enough to play, then that needs to be addressed by the club in the transfer windows. But if we are going to play this version of Ange ball as I see it, we need to start doing better and being braver. So braver on the pass, seeing it and actually executing, and then the player receiving it has to go in there with confidence. When the games are going our way, it's happening and it's looking great. We're seeing players like Maddison and Decky receive the ball, they're rolling players, they're getting other side, and it's going very well. But we need to consistently do that. And so can we do it against a high press and be braver? That's something that needs to be shown by this crop of players. And the flip side of it is a team that sits in a mid or low block and is letting you come to a certain point, and then they'll press you aggressively when it comes to that, or they'll sit in and make it really hard for you to play in behind. So it's a similar kind of thing, but you're doing it in a different area of the pitch. So you're either doing it playing out of your defence, or you're doing it a bit higher up the pitch. And again, teams are sitting in and they're saying to you, okay, move us around, try and produce something, and we'll congest it and make it very hard for you. Again, this is where we need those rotations. So players constantly changing positions. And as a player moves to a new position and these rotations are happening, you are asking the opposition a question. Do I go with that player? Do I change what I'm doing here? Or am I still currently marking somebody, still currently blocking a passing lane, still currently helping out my teammate or whichever unit I'm part of? You're asking questions. We've got to get those movements. We've got to be a bit more dynamic with it. And then with that dynamism comes the bravery to play those passes. And then comes the individual quality of each player to do the right thing when they get the ball. It's all about consequences, as I'm always talking about. You take responsibility for your part of the game and what you then do with it. And you can very easily go through an entire game, an entire season, an entire career of doing it quite neat, quite tidy, being quite risk averse. You'll do some nice things at times and there'll be some moments where it really works for you. But that for me is not what this coach is trying to bring to the football club. And therefore, if that's not the ethos and that's not the system that's getting played, we have to have players who are willing to do something different and players who are confident that the coaching staff are going to back them. The manager is going to back them. He's not going to call you out for doing what he wants and what he requires to make his system work. So I still think that we lack a little bit of that conviction, a little bit of that bravery. And then the final thing I'll talk about, when there's this idea of no plan B, it's only do plan A better. I think that there's a validity to doing things that way, and that's been talked about across all the Spurs channels in terms of whether that's the right way to do things or be more pragmatic. For me, it's more about when you're in this situation that something is not working, it's not changing fundamentally what you're trying to do. But there are differences to what you're trying to do. And I go back to a great example last season of when we had huge injuries and we played Aston Villa at home. We played with a high line, Aston Villa came with a really high line. And we've got the players like James Maddison who are capable of picking a ball out over the top. Romero can do it, Bentancur can do it, Maddison can do it, Porro's got a great delivery on him. And early on in that game, we did a couple of things that were potentially not in keeping with, in inverted commas, Ange ball, and yet they were hugely successful. All they were was percentage passes to turn around the Aston Villa defence. We had pace, we were committed, we were able to flip it over the top and turn them around. Now, it didn't have an end result every time, but what it did do is it started to push Villa back. They started to question what they were doing. And then what that then does is open up space in front of them, and it allowed us to play. We actually played very well that game. We were very committed. We tried to play some football. I want to see a bit more of this. I've seen Archie Gray do it, and I don't know whether it's because he's young and he's not listening to instruction, but every now and again he is spinning a ball a little bit longer than some of the other passes that we've seen when things are getting tight. And it's not a lump forward, and it's not a hopeful positional ball, like kicking for touch in rugby. It's genuinely probing. It's another form of probing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying something different. I don't think when we play against low block we try enough clipped balls in and over to turn defences around, the last line of the defence, so it goes in and over to turn them around. It is a tactic that Man City are brilliant at. Barcelona were very good at it under Pep, and they were also very good at playing in between those little channels, in between midfielders and defenders. And it only works for possession-based teams. Otherwise you give possession away all the time and it doesn't suit what you're trying to achieve. It only works if you are moving that ball with a bit of conviction. If you're in that situation where the ball is going right to left, right to left, right to left, in, back, out, round, and it's slow, you're not going to get into that situation. But what you need to do is you need to build it until you're confident that you've got the right situation, and then you need to speed up the play. Yeah, it's a little bit like wingers taking on fullbacks or taking on their opposite number. Slow them down, then speed it up. It's about getting to an area, you've got secure possession, your team is set, and I want to see a little bit more of speeding up the pass, short passes or close passes, or 1, 2, boom, it goes. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, in. Yeah, you can only do that if you're practicing on the training ground, because you're going to need willing runners to challenge that ball coming over the top so that something drops. Okay, it might not be about the first ball going in and then that leading to a chance. Obviously, that's the best case scenario. But it's also turning the defence around, causing issues. Are you getting the opposition goalkeeper to start thinking, well, should I be coming out to these? They're starting to do this. Should I be staying on my line? and then causing chaos, getting in. We've got physical presence with Solanke, we've got physical presence with Decky and with Richie. Can we start spinning these balls in and starting to get oppositions kind of trying to hack it away, which then leads to more spaces, and then with quality we should create more chances. These are the kind of things I want to see, but they only work off the basis of, and all of these things only work off the basis of being quicker and more committed with our passing, move the ball quicker and with a bit more purpose, being braver, so the passer and the receivers of passes, get the rotations moving, get players changing positions with real commitment. And I do understand that under Ange's system, the amount of running that everybody does in terms of running forward and then running back and done at very, very high intensity, I do understand sometimes why, you know, we get to the 65th minute and we do seem to run out of a bit of steam before we get a second wind. That might also affect how quickly and how committed we are to these rotations of players changing positions. And then if you are, you know, learning and growing as a team, you start to identify situations where this isn't working the way we're doing it. And so you're doing all the basic stuff, but then you change it up and you give the opposition something different to think about. And that's the final piece of it for me. If you build it like that, I feel that that's where we could start to have success. And we have seen progression this season from what we were doing last season to what we're doing this season when it's going well. So now I want to see progression when it's not going so well. What are we doing? How are we changing it? How are we changing what we do? It isn't a complete, you know, baby out with the bathwater where it's, well, this isn't working against a high press, let's spank it down the field and try and win first and second balls. It's absolutely not that. But it is certainly do plan A better. And if doing plan A better is still not getting you there, what can we tweak? What can we do slightly differently? And those are the areas that I want to see. We're in season number 2. So as upset as we can be about some of the performances this season against Brighton and against Arsenal, where I felt we weren't brave enough and we didn't take responsibility, and the Crystal Palace result, these are things that we could certainly improve on. And as we start to see that improvement, we'll take another step forward. So those are the things I want to see. A bit more purpose, a bit more character, a bit more bravery, passing and receiving the ball. And then what can we do slightly differently to unsettle teams and give them something different to think about? I'm going to leave it there for this one. Let me know if you've got other ideas of what we could do, how we can have a plan A.1 and A.2 and A.3 as opposed to, you know, just going to prime Tony Pulis ball. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next one. Come on, Tottenham.